There's one moment that terrifies people trapped in narcissistic traits more than anything else. It isn't the loss of money, or status, or even a relationship. It's the exact second you look at them and they realize you finally see who they really are. And that's when they become the most dangerous. Because the mask they've worn for years, sometimes decades, begins to crack. And when you recognize the face behind it, their entire system of survival starts to unravel. I'm going to show you the 5 reactions that almost always appear when this mask falls away, why each one happens, and most importantly, how you can protect yourself when it does. Because here's the truth most people never understand. Their explosive reaction isn't proof you've done something wrong. It's proof you've finally done something right. But to grasp why this moment is so devastating for them and so liberating for you, we need to start with the moment of recognition. Picture this: you've been in a relationship, a friendship, or a family bond where something always felt off. The charm seemed rehearsed, the empathy felt selective. The stories they told never quite lined up. You couldn't explain it, but your gut knew. And then, suddenly, it happens, that flicker when their mask slips. Maybe you catch them in a lie they can't explain away. Maybe you watch them treat a stranger with cold contempt, while still smiling sweetly at you. Or maybe it's the way their eyes change in an instant, warmth vanishing, replaced by something calculating, empty, almost predatory. That's the aha moment. The moment you realize the performance isn't real. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. The act that used to mesmerize you now looks obvious, almost absurd. Like a stage trick, where the wires are suddenly visible. And here's the danger. They can feel that shift in you. They see the change in your gaze, the new weight in your silence, the disbelief you no longer bother to hide. They know their greatest lifeline, your belief in their false self, is in jeopardy. And for them, that isn't just a problem. It's a threat to survival. The psychology behind the mask. Carl Jung warned that every human being wears what he called a persona, the mask we show the world to navigate society. You act one way at work, another way with close friends, a little differently with your parents or your partner. That's healthy. The persona is meant to be flexible, something we can remove when we're safe enough to show our true selves. But for those who live through narcissistic traits, the persona fuses to their identity. It isn't a role. It's who they believe they are: superior, charming, untouchable, always right. The mask stops being temporary, it becomes permanent. And what lies behind it is what Jung called the shadow. Everything repressed, denied, and exiled: insecurity, shame, envy, weakness, fear. For most of us, growth means slowly facing those shadows, learning from them, integrating them into a fuller sense of self. But for them, facing the shadow feels like drowning. The pain is too much, the shame too sharp. So instead of integrating it, they project it. They push their self-loathing onto others, especially empaths, who will pick it up and carry it without even realizing. This is why being figured out feels like annihilation to them. You're not just poking at their image. You're tugging at the fragile system they've built to survive since childhood. And when that system trembles, the shadow erupts. And that eruption shows itself in 5 devastating ways. And the first one is so subtle, most people miss it until they're already trapped. When the mask cracks, 5 reactions. The first defense is almost always denial. But this isn't the casual denial of someone caught in a mistake. This is a full-scale assault on reality itself. They look you straight in the eye and insist that the sky is green, the floor is glass, that the betrayal you uncovered never happened at all. Sarah had proof, screenshots, timestamps, undeniable evidence her partner was lying. But within an hour of confronting him, she was the one apologizing. Not because the facts had changed, but because he had convinced her she was paranoid, unstable, even cruel. That's the precision of gaslighting. It isn't meant to make you believe him. It's designed to make you stop believing yourself. And when denial fails, something darker bursts through: rage. Sometimes volcanic, the slammed door, the scream that rattles your bones. Other times glacial, calm, controlled voice slicing into your deepest wounds with surgical precision. Lisa once questioned her mother's favoritism, and in return was buried under a 45-minute tirade about how selfish and delusional she was. Jung warned that aggression doesn't disappear when repressed, it gathers strength in the dark until it erupts. For them, your recognition feels like humiliation, and humiliation must be avenged. But not every mask cracks loudly, some collapse into silence. A phone that never rings, a presence that feels like absence. Michael asked his father for space, and was met with 3 months of wordless exile. Silence, weaponized, isn't distance, it's punishment. A chilling message: see what happens when you stop playing along. The goal isn't resolution. It's control, pulling you back into doubt by making you ache for connection. And when silence no longer holds, the mask shifts again. Suddenly, they are the wounded one. Tears appear, voices tremble. How could you accuse me after all I've done for you? For empaths, this is the cruelest trap, because compassion becomes the leash around your neck. Janet confronted her sister's endless put-downs, only to find herself consoling her minutes later, promising to work on her sensitivity. The tears weren't repentance. They were strategy, another mask, this time painted with fragility. And if none of this restores control, the whispers begin. Stories circulate. Friends hear you've become unstable. Family hears you're not yourself. David ended a toxic friendship, only to discover his words twisted into weapons, his reputation dismantled piece by piece. This is the smear campaign, their last resort, scattering their shadow across the community, so they don't have to carry it themselves. Denial, rage, silence, victimhood, slander. Not isolated tricks, but a single desperate sequence, the persona fracturing, the shadows spilling out, the false self fighting for survival. The deeper truth, but here's the twist, all of these reactions aren't really about you at all. Beneath every defense lies one purpose: to make you forget what you saw. Not just the lie, not just the betrayal, but your own clarity. That terrifying realization that you can see through them. Carl Jung believed that our greatest growth comes through what he called individuation, the process of becoming whole by integrating the shadow we'd rather deny. But for those trapped in narcissistic traits, the shadow feels unbearable. It holds too much pain, too much shame, so they spend their lives avoiding it. That's where you come in. You become the container. Their insecurity seeps into your self-doubt. Their confusion becomes your fog. Their shame, their envy, their rage, you absorb it, thinking it belongs to you. And they stay polished, untouchable, while you walk heavy with what was never yours to carry. This is why your recognition is so dangerous. Because in that moment, you stop being their container. You stop carrying the burden. You hand their shadow back to them. And they will do anything: rage, silence, slander, to force it back into your hands. The empath's vulnerability. And this is where the battle cuts deepest. Because if you're watching this, there's a good chance you're an empath. And narcissists don't choose you by accident. They seek out people like you precisely because your strengths can be turned against you. Your ability to feel others' emotions deeply. They use it to offload their own pain, your hunger for harmony. They exploit it to keep you from confronting them, your gift of forgiveness. They count on it to escape accountability again and again. If you've ever found yourself apologizing for things you didn't do, carrying guilt you couldn't explain, or trying to fix storms you didn't create, you already know this feeling. That's why their defenses pierce you so much harder than they would someone else. When they rage, you don't just hear anger, you absorb the chaos flooding your body. When they go silent, you don't just notice absence, you ache with guilt, desperate to repair what you think you broke. When they play the victim, you don't just see the tears, you feel compelled to comfort them, even when that suffering is manufactured. Emma lived 3 years walking on eggshells with a friend who alternated between rage and tears. Every confrontation ended the same way. Emma apologizing for pain she hadn't caused, promising to be more careful, taking responsibility for feelings that weren't hers to manage. What she didn't realize was that her empathy had been turned into a leash pulled tight every time she tried to step away. Jung called this participation mystique, a state where the boundaries between self and other dissolve. For empaths, this blur is dangerous. You become responsible for storms you didn't cause, guilty for shadows you didn't create, trapped in fixing a system that was broken long before you arrived. But here is the crucial truth. Their inability to handle exposure is not your emergency. Their chaos is not your responsibility to calm. Their terror of being seen is not your fault for seeing. The liberation principle. Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." For years, you may have felt exactly that, like you were cursed to keep apologizing, cursed to carry other people's emotions, cursed to sacrifice your peace just to keep relationships intact. But that wasn't fate. That was unconscious participation in someone else's shadow. The instant you see through the mask, something shifts. You're no longer trapped in their illusion. You're no longer the container for what they can't face. And with that awareness comes the rarest kind of freedom, the freedom to choose. You no longer have to absorb their projections. You no longer have to question your reality every time it collides with their denial. You no longer have to trade your self-worth to maintain their image. This is individuation, not just surviving a narcissist, but becoming who you truly are instead of who someone else needs you to be. It's the difference between living reactively and living authentically. And here's the part most people miss. This process isn't only about them. Once you learn to stand immune to one person's manipulation, you become resistant to manipulation everywhere. Once you trust your perceptions absolutely, no one can gaslight you again. The very defenses they unleash, rage, silence, guilt-tripping, slander, end up exposing where your deepest power lies. In your clarity, in your refusal to carry what was never yours, in your courage to stand in truth, even when it means standing alone. Their terror of exposure is proof of something extraordinary about you, that you have the strength to see what others ignore, the integrity to face what others deny, and the light to live in a way no mask can counterfeit. So if you're in that moment now, if the mask has slipped, and you're staring at what lies beneath, remember this: their reaction is not evidence of your weakness. It's evidence of your breakthrough. The light you protect today becomes the freedom you live tomorrow. And that light, the capacity to see clearly, to trust yourself, to walk in truth, is yours. No mask, no rage, no silence, no smear can ever take it away. And this is only the first step. Because in the next video, we'll explore what happens when the narcissist realizes not only that you see them, but that you're no longer afraid.